Session 598. Now, good evening to you. Rob noted to Rob. They said, we will begin with an explanation of your experience last evening, and our record keeper over here. Rob noted, me. They said, we'll also understand what you are doing. Two things were involved. A certain evolution of your abilities, using the eye phenomena. Do you follow me? Rob said, yes. They said, and secondly, of course, what you experienced. You were not picking up anything regarding Rupert's father, as you thought. Instead, you were indeed perceiving in your own fashion what was happening here for the entire evening. You are well aware of any changes that occur as far as Rupert's own abilities are concerned, or any offshoots, say, from our sessions or work, and so thought you were not here physically. You did indeed participate. Rob said, I didn't start until quite late, though. They said, the time makes little difference. Earlier, you were beginning to put yourself in that frame of mind and the physiological state, which would bring about the particular changes that bring you to the I method. This time, however, you were aware of what you were trying to do. You were trying to use your ability in a particular fashion, and so you did. You were dealing with an energy source, and it was this that you were trying to perceive, and the reason for the brilliance and also the concentrated area with which you were dealing. Not an expansion, but a small concentrated brilliant area. Rob noted, to me. They said, now you remember, because of one of your experiences and something I said in a session, or rather, another portion of me said in a session, having to do with the fact that Seth too, if you could perceive him, would be as small as a brown nut. Rob noted, to Rob. They said, and so you were perceiving a core of energy that radiated outward and infringed upon this reality, intruded upon it, hence the fragmented area about it, you see, and the seemingly drugged effect. Rob said, it was very beautiful. They said, it was indeed. Rob said, but impossible to describe, Rob added. They said, you will be able to do an approximation in an entirely different fashion. In several paintings, you will not see what you have done until some time after you have done it, because the difference in the product, in the painting itself, will be so divorced from the original vision that you will not see that they come from the same source. Now, the energy here last night was strong enough so that it could be picked up very easily, but you perceived its approach. Do you follow me? Before it was here, in your turns, you were aware of its approach and began to prepare yourself to perceive it in whatever fashion you could. Rob noted. Well, Rob said, earlier I heard a fragment of that chant while I was still typing, but I forgot about it. They said, you began the physiological procedure approximately 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Now, Rupert also knew what was going to happen and that you would be involved. simply because the eye effect frightens him, and he is always aware ahead of time of such activities on your part. You are all summary. Rob asked, "What's that?" They said, "It is what you are." Rob and I laughed. "All right," he agreed, "but you will have to explain it to us." They said, "And you knew it is what you are, and what you will be, and as the other developments in the sessions also rose out of what you are and what Ruber is, so did this one. It is the reason, again, why you participated in your own way, though you were not at class. And you will indeed receive the full story in good time. I want to make a point to you. However, you can imaginatively receive data now without the eye involvement. In the past, in your very earlier years, you needed that mechanism. It caught your attention. It pivoted it and made you concentrate. Now, you see that you recognize the connection. You will not need it. It leads, however, to a strong pivoting of your energy. You are concentrating your own perceptive abilities and energy almost in the same fashion. For example, as a laser beam concentrates energy. Do you follow me? So that the vision that you received, while it was microscopic, was still brilliant and radiated strong energy. Now, such a vision is not only something that you see that intrudes upon this reality, but also something that has its effects upon this reality, and often effects that you do not perceive. You perceive the appearance of the image, but its other effects escape you. The concentration of energy itself is highly important, you see, and changes the behavior even of the atoms and molecules within the neighborhood of its appearance. Now, remember what I told you in the book about the black holes and the concentration of energy. Now, such occurrences allow you unusual exchanges of energy from one system to another. They are fountains, therefore, of new energy. And their very intrusion into your world activates that reality in a different fashion, usually in a quickly stirring, transforming fashion, an activation, say, rather than a slowing down. There are, incidentally, levels of motion so fast that they attain what seems to be a level of complete peace, where motion is not perceived. Beyond such levels, the motion is perceived again, and the period of peace seems over. Now, in the case of your experience that evening, the image itself by its appearance activates the air in the atmosphere. In that activation, however, it achieved finally a level of seeming peace where you do not perceive it, but in which it still exists. There is also a reason why you perceived it in the particular room that you did, you see. Rob at the kitchen in our second apartment across the hall. You mean because of the open surroundings? They said, because of your attitude toward it, because of the open surroundings, and because it is highly charged for other reasons. Now, the energy that was here that night became suspended for a time between the two apartments, so that there was a give and take. Had you been even more aware, for example, it would have been fairly easy for you to perceive more than you did, and you could have done it through sketching. You could have brought out forms that were here beneath your visual perception. Do you have any questions now in that regard? Rapport. Well, no. But a couple of times I felt that I was right on the verge of accomplishing more with it, but I couldn't quite bridge the gap to bring it about. The first thing I thought of was Jane's father, though. I didn't actually see him, but I was telling Jane that at times I thought I did see the shape of the back of the head. I did associate that with his head. They said, there is also a connection between the death of Robert's father, your fine physicist's father's death, and the introduction of the submarine name to the class in general. Russ said, I thought about Elf's father's death last night, referring to Elf Oberg, a class member whose father had died the Thursday before Jane's father had. What's the connection? They said, I will tell you. I like to hold some of my goodies back. Now, give us a moment. There are alliances in all levels of reality. There are attractions that reach even bright space and time, groupings of consciousness, associations, psychic attractions that hold and mold various kinds of consciousness in a loose organization. There are personalities who come together for certain reasons, varying reasons, whose individual inclinations are somewhat the same and purpose. You may think of the guides in the Middle Ages. For example, these groups of consciousness range throughout history as you know it, in their own way and according to their capacity and purpose. They change and alter the nature of the universe, sometimes by being born within the historical time, and sometimes by trying to reach those who are within your historical time. They are far closer in your terms because of their nature affinity than they are, for example, sometimes even to other portions of their own entity, as you might be closer to a strong friend than you are to certain members of your own family, though they may be of your own blood. It is a membership of choice, in other words, of attraction and respect, and usually this is bound by like purpose and endeavor, and to offer a different kind of assurance and bonds that are destroyed in your terms by any amount of reincarnation or any amount of time you use them. Now, you may take your break. They said, now, who is taking the record this evening and who has been taking records for class? And enough said in that direction. Now, let us speak about the summary. Rupert does not like the idea of brotherhood, alive or dead, so I shall not use that phrase. So we will say that the Sumeri are a guild. In much earlier times, they would be a royal guild, in that they are the richest, the most expensive. They have indeed, on their own, begun civilizations. They have a large membership. It is impossible to speak to you in terms of membership, however, for the idea of individuality is not clear with you yet, and you would think in terms of how many individuals. I am trying to find words that will not offend our friend, and sometimes it is difficult. This group, therefore, has always been involved in the kind of work in which you are now involved, and on a grand scale. They never forget their members. They are indeed initiates. But all of you passed that stage in another layer of reality, in your turns, some time ago. Their main activities take place in other levels of consciousness. You are on missions, in certain terms. You do attend meetings when you are in the sleep state between lives. You work through many layers of reality at the same time. Now, these are the people, for example, that you noted me, Seth were speaking of, the strangers that you see in your dreams. You are affecting each other's realities, but you have always done this to some degree. Now, this is different from the speakers. A speaker may or may not be a summary. Some speakers are summary, and some are not. There are bonds of affection and understanding that unite this group, and a speaker may or may not be one. The relationships, however, go between realities. You can be closer than with another summary than you are with a husband or wife, particularly if you do not like the husband or wife over well. It is not true to say that this is a religious group in any way, but it is true to say that this is a very strong alliance. And the alliance is of a kind that is difficult to explain. Who, for example, may work together and have to initiate certain discoveries on various words, or to prepare the groundwork, in your terms, for future events. They interweave not only through your centuries, as you understand them, but through other realities. They are great coordinators. Now, many are efficient in one particular reality and devoted to it. But the summary coordinate very well and moved within a freedom that is denied to many. It is simply their nature. Ralph asked, what brings a group together? I know I am speaking of beginnings and endings, but what causes a group of samurai to congregate? They said they congregate in those terms seldom. They did not suddenly get together and decide, we will be a group. Ralph said, I realized that, but why did they get together? They said, because of the bonds of affection and understanding, and the instant intuitional comprehension that allows them to recognize one another. It is an instant recognition of brotherhood and unity of purpose, and in a strange manner, overall of temperament. Now, astrology, as it is thought of, and as it is taught, you see, represents but a vague shadow of something far different. Consciousness generally can be divided into certain characteristics, hardly the small number presently given to it. For example, in charts, the 12 horses. Now, that sort of thing is a dim shadow. In three-dimensional terms, dealing with one planet of a much more vast system. And in that vast system, there are this particular group of people who are united by certain traits and similarities. Are there other such groups? They said, there are indeed. Ralph pursued, all right. Say some speakers are summary, but might another group of speakers be of another family? Seth said, the speakers generally do not fall into any particular group. Do you follow me? There will be groups of speakers within these large guilds. Now, I am using that term purposely. Rob said, I don't think Rupert would object if you used some other term. Seth said, we like to break things gently to him. Rob laughed. He'll get used to it. I asked, how are the summary different from other groups? Seth said, in their strong psychic alliance and in their coordination abilities, and the agility with which they can manipulate between systems, consciously, with purpose, and with some exuberance. They are communicators in that they spread knowledge from one system of reality to another. They are given much more, for example, to ideas rather than to the various camouflage realities within systems. Many groups you see deal exclusively with the camouflage reality between systems, with building it up, with its maintenance. Ross suggested that the summary have experienced the various kinds of physical realities. They said, they have indeed. They have indeed. And in that respect, they are initiators, say, of a particular camouflage system. But they are not those who continually nourish that camouflage system. There are groups who do that. Rob asked, would Seth too fit in that group? Seth said humorously, would Seth too fit in which group? Rob explained, those more apt to nourish. I think he mentioned that once. Seth said, initiate and nourish in his particular case. The summary, however, and they all initiate the birth of systems. They constantly carry communications between systems, and they deal with the initiation and communication of ideas from one system to another. Because they are initiators, therefore, they are creators. They are, however, comparatively speaking, like those who create and then are satisfied to go on to other creations. They want someone else to take care of what they have created. They do not want to hang around to gnaw the grass, in other words. But those who mow the grass could not create it. Rob asked, how about the two voices that came through last night? Seth said, Rupert is quite correct. He will learn how to translate those realities. Rob said, is that why they were weak? Seth said, it has to do with his physical sensations at the time and also the weakness of the voice. The weakness, however, did not have to do with the weakness of power, but to his inability to translate the strange material that he was receiving. Rob added, was this material from specific entities or personalities in those terms? Seth said, now, there are some things that I will have to explain to you slowly. And the true answer to your question will take time. One summary is all summary. There are gradations in those terms within the summary alliances. Therefore, everyone is not at the same level, if you follow me. It is an organization of affection, loyalty, and abilities, and there will be varying grades within their alliance. Now, everyone who was here last night was summary, and many who come to class, even for one time, are summary. Rob put in, but it's not only summary who come to class. They said, it is not indeed. I want to go into, and I will at a later date, the connections between this kind of reality and the astrology that is now popular. What were you going to say about the connection between Jane's father and Elle's father and this? They said, the time, simply, was right for the information to come through, because two members had lost members of their own family. They were ready, therefore, to learn of their greater family, and for various reasons, personal reasons, having to do with both class members. This was also to be a reassurance to our friend Ruber. There is a family who loves him after all, and you can only be involved in this work so long, you see, before you become acquainted with your true associates. Your acquaintanceship grows, and you discover old friendships. You are being recognized in your turns as your present personalities by your guild again. The conscious self was not told, you see. You are now ready to take up conscious membership. It is only a way to acquaint your conscious self with your real and deep alliances. The information would have made little sense some years ago. Now, I will also have some things to say concerning the nature of the two personalities, in quotes, for whom our friend spoke last night. But I suggest now that you take a break, even though I do not have to worry about the state of your fingers. They said, the session is not over. No. There are several reasons why the person last evening appeared feminine in the first instance, and this is a matter, again, of translation. The summary are initiators and creators. They are filled with feelings of abundance. They have great energy, you see. There is not a word in your vocabulary to explain what I am trying to get at. The word graciousness as used that evening comes faintly close. The feminine seemed to apply. Therefore, it was a way of getting these characteristics across. It was also a way that Ruber used to translate the idea of the particular kind of creativity involved. The idea, indeed, of birth, for this is the birth or ascent of a new kind of reality that this group is involved with. You were listening in one respect to the voice of your people. The second voice, therefore, also had its own part to play, bringing in the idea, helpfully, both of ancient knowledge and of youth. And in that case, the feminine idea was not used. Do you follow me? These were then the voices of your people coming to you in ways that you could understand. They were coming from personalities. The transmission, however, is of a different kind. Therefore, though the messages were coming from personalities, the entire turn involves a translation that escapes you. We translate the word personality. We translate what we are into a term that you understand. Rob asked, Could you give us a word that we could learn to use? They said, Now, I will be doing that. I do not want to involve you with an esoteric language that can be used to close others out as well as to unite you. But there will be terms that I will be giving you. And again, this development was latent in the early beginning of our sessions. Now, give us a moment. The multidimensional experience of this group was suddenly and surprisingly present for Robert to draw upon that evening. Now, he translated this into layers of voices and various languages, and did not know how to translate or contain the information that was quite legitimately available. Now, this is a storehouse of knowledge, not of one personality in your terms, but, for example, it can be compared to your racial history, to the achievements of your people, its goals and purposes. Now, as you noted, Rob, they said, might perceive such information visually, it is translated for Robert in an entirely different fashion. Therefore, you see, I do not believe that at one time you will be able to get a translation of some of the old speakers' manuscripts, but it still will be a difficult endeavor. The same information can be given, you see, in other ways. Now, I am interested in your reaching people at large. You mean through publication? They said, in any way, through the publication, and whether or not such a manuscript would allow us to do so in any more efficient way than we will anyway, is another point. It may. It would take some time, and also it would require that I clear the issue myself with several people of my own acquaintanceship. It would take several years then? They said it would indeed, and perhaps longer. Robert might need, for example, a raised or a different kind of material in between. However, it could not have taken place had the experience that evening not taken place. He would not have been ready. Rob asked, will you get this information yourself, or will you get it through speakers? They said this would be a combined activity. It would take far too much effort on my part, for example, away from other endeavors, to do that particular thing alone. I will oversee it. Like a summary? They said, indeed. And a very high lieutenant indeed, I will have you know. Rob asked, can we digress a moment here? They said, you have never had to ask my permission in the past. You may indeed. Well, I was thinking a minute ago about the incident with Jane and Dr. Wild in Sarah. They said, I was amused that he did not ask me. Rob said, why didn't he ask? They said, you must ask him. Now, Robert's friend, his darling Dr. Wild, is indeed a summary. They both knew it at once, and you are lucky they did not go into that chant and dance right there. The gesture in your terms now was a translation, not into words, but into a physical gesture, of acknowledgement and recognition. Rob observed. They almost hugged. They said they did indeed. They were well aware of their affiliation. Now, you, for example, are also a summary, but the same recognition did not hit you. The doctor, however, did pick it up as far as you were concerned, though to a lesser degree. He and Ruber have worked together, you see, on other occasions, and also have known each other in some past lives. He knew you as a summary, but he had not worked with you, in your terms, personally. They were closely involved, and in a work relationship, a highly personal work relationship. They were also members of several small tribes. Now, all of you communicate in the dream state, and they had me there often also, discussing work in which they had been involved in the past. Ralph said, well, such encounters can't be too infrequent then. They said, they are not. The experience that evening on both of your parts and the part of the class will initiate new information and endeavors and activities and experiences. Ralph said, that's the kind of thing we talked about in break. For instance, you go into a supermarket and out of all the people you encounter casually, I am sure that we would like some guidance on how we can pick out summary. They said, there will be no doubt if you trust their inner reactions. You first have to be aware that the group exists. Now, what about our friend over here? Noted. Me? I said, I was just thinking about the woman with the book in the drugstore, referring to a person I noticed in face some weeks before. She had been standing by a book rack, shuffling through bestsellers, and I would had a strong, almost sisterly urge to walk up to her and start talking about books we've been reading lately. They said she was indeed summary. Noted to Rob. They said, and the information that you were discussing at supper time will indeed be given, and in altered fashion. The personal information that was begun. And now, I bid you a fond good evening, not worried about your fingers. Noted, Rob. They said, but our friends over here. Noted, me. They said, we will have to send her additional energy. She will doubtlessly have some experiences on her own as she types it out. However, to compensate, I look out for her. I said, Seth, can I ask a question about something you said to me in class? They said, you may indeed. The remark about objects, did that concern my parents' house? They said, it did indeed. I've had a number of dreams about the house in which there was a terrified feeling, and the house had an animalistic look, which is contrary to how I feel about it consciously. I said, is this the point at which I can't differentiate? They said, it expresses your fears that the house traps you, and it is a turnabout. The house appears animalistic. Men trap animals, but in this case, the animal traps you. And that was the point I didn't realize? They said, it was indeed. You did not realize. You think that you realize. Rob asked me, well, you do now, don't you? They said, not completely. It seems very clear to her that she realizes that she projected. The realization has not come fully, but it will. Moving from the situation will indeed help clear your vision. Now, I bid you a fond good evening, and some night I will do our chant for you. Jane came out of trance at 11:20, and we sat and talked about what had been said. During the past hour or so, however, the first syllables of a word, grunt or groan, had been going through my head, and I had the idea that it was related to these families. I remarked, I wonder what some other family names are. I keep getting these words like Grondon or something. At that, Seth was abruptly there. Gronoral. Rob said, what? The tape was off, and I switched it on in a hurry. What was that? I asked. One more time, Seth, Rob said. Wait a minute, this is me, Jane said with a dazed look. Could you repeat that again for the record? I waited, and Seth came through again, loudly. Groan! I said, oh. Rob and I were both laughing. What do they do? Seth stared at me in that penetrating way of his for several moments. They said, now, we are not going to get into a discussion of all the guilds or brotherhoods this evening, because I want to do a good job when we do it now. The chant, however, the vowels and the syllables used in pronouncing the chant are highly important and invocative. The sounds themselves are keys that tune you in, so to speak, with certain frequencies. In other words, the chant is a tool in that regard, a translation in completely different terms of something far different. Now, I bid you good evening.